Love Live is the anime equivalent of Helen of Troy. Since it's known by all, it looked great, and it launched 1,000 ships. Just in the case of Love Live, all of those ships were Yuri ones. Love Live is multifaceted, with it putting out music, games, and anime. The fanbase alone is monolithic, with it amassing a global army consisting of teenage girls and salarymen with too much spare time on their hands. Guess which category I fall into. Feels almost reductive to call it a franchise. And instead, if you wanted to describe it, you'd have to use a different word, let's go with religion. But it's a universal rule that no matter which Japanese intellectual property you're into, you're always going to be burdened by filthy anime-onlys like myself. My, and I assume many other people's, main exposure to Love Live comes through the anime. Something that I don't think is talked about enough. 2025 is the first time this decade we haven't had at least one new Love Live anime series, and we've reached a new status quo of every major group having graduated in their respective animes, and the rest of the sub-series being adapted into literally anything but an anime season. Hasu no Sora, Hasu no Adaptation, and Love Live Bluebird is giving us Love Live Blue Balls. So now is the best time to properly sit down and wonder, which live did I love the most? While there are currently 4 series of Love Live, I'm going one step further, so I'm going to be ranking each individual season of the Love Live anime to see which one comes out on top. To do so, I've got to spoil quite a few elements, so keep that in mind if you haven't seen these series. I've been planning this video out for yonks, so long in fact that when I started the initial scripting, a third of the seasons I'm going to be talking about today hadn't even aired. Note my use of the word season, as I will not be counting OVAs or movies because those are separate beasts. I'm also excluding side projects. I won't be including Sunshine in the Mirror because it's a fantasy anime, and I won't be including Nijiyon because I want to give the others a fair chance. The Nijiyon sweep is real. But speaking of Nijigasaki, something had to be last place. Nijigasaki Season 2 is probably the only Love Live season to disappoint me. Some of this is down to how much I like the first season, but there are plenty of other reasons that this represents the nadir of Love Live. The basic premise of this season is that one day, this girl called Lanju rocks up and does this fuck-ass song in front of everyone. The Nijigasaki High School Idol Club is pretty impressed, so they ask her, "Hey, Lanju, do you want to join our school idol club? We're not really an idol group, but instead just a solo act, so essentially the exact same as what you're doing right now." And Lanju says, no. Nijigasaki Season 2 promised to be a hybrid of the episodic structure of the first season with the more arc-based format of the other Love Live series, and it doesn't do either particularly well. Once it gets into the swing of things, the season focuses on the formation of the sub-units within Nijigasaki, and most of these episodes are somehow both way too rushed and also have more padding than Eris's bra. I've almost certainly made that exact joke before on this channel, but if this season isn't going to do anything exciting with its writing, then neither will I. Despite being the lowest on this list, it's not the lowest quality thing I've ever seen. Quite far from it actually, as there's certainly things you can enjoy within this anime. As the sequel to Love Live Nijigasaki, it has some of the innate advantages that come with the territory, namely that the animation is always crisp and that there are plenty of solo songs, my personal favourite of which being Shioriko's number. It would have been Lanju's stuff, but we only get 10 seconds of her best song. As for the best song overall, has to be Eternal Light. I mentioned it previously in my 2022 Anime Awards that whole episode was a highlight for the season, and I think that's just down to how it narrowed down its focus onto only a few characters and gave them a tangible obstacle to overcome, which is also why I ended up enjoying parts of Mia and Shioriko's arcs as well. However, there's just not much to write home about here, positive or negative. If I'm going to talk about things at length, we've got to kick it old school. This is the 3rd ranking video I've made, and every time I do one of these, the chronologically first one is always ranked second last. This wasn't intentional, I just find that kind of odd. Anyway, let's talk about a season that came out a Chinese zodiac ago that marked the first time they'd made a full anime series out of Love Live. And it wouldn't be a stretch to say that Sunrise might have taken a liking to this idea. The school is going to get shut down, Honoka wants to stop it, she forms an idol group to enter the Love Live. At this stage, it's a format more well known than the story of Gilgamesh. Everything we associate with Love Live comes from this very anime. But despite being an archetype, School Idol Project was given plenty of welly on this first go-around. Now, it wasn't until the second season that you'd start to think, oh yeah, you can really make a religion out of this, but there's still a clear vision here, albeit one that has yet to fully form. Unlike the original anime MVs for Muse's songs, the characters and backgrounds are all much more colourful, and the movement is much less rigid. If you want a comparison on how expressive the characters feel, then imagine a difference between the cast of Konosuba as portrayed in the light novel front covers with how they look in the anime itself. Yeah, remember Ikemen Kazuma? Weird times. Speaking of weird times, School Idol Project is very much of its time. But joke's on you, I really like that time. School Idol Project came out at the height of Moe, and so the actual idol side of things is kind of in the passenger seat, as the main driving force is the slice of life comedy side. Love Live was surfing the wave of the Moe movement. That's why it doesn't just go for idol fans, but openly embraces general otaku sensibilities, with things like the Akiba setting, Rin's Neko mouth, and Nico Nico Sneeze. If there was a series in which to focus on comedy, it would be this one, as School Idol Project is probably the funniest sub-series out of the four. It gives us all a chance to laugh along with the cast before things get serious towards the end, and that really helps acquaint the audience with each member of Muse. Okay, most members of Muse. Some of the first years are kind of forgettable. At least half of the cast will make a good first impression on you. Nico is previously mentioned, Maki is the classic tsundere, and Honoka herself, a character whose resolve is inversely proportional to her number of brain cells. As for the actual idol side of things, that's where the low placement starts to make more sense. I will maintain that A-Rise's number at the start is tight, and probably one of the best looking in the franchise. However, the rest of the performances have a common element letting them down. It's not the music, it's the CG. Obviously this is a while ago, so 3D CG was something that most of the industry was still in the process of mastering. That's why Sunrise should get some praise for what they did with this first season. As where many other shows of the era had inferior CG work, School Idol Project used 3D animation to vividly depict what my sleep paralysis demons look like. Another criticism I have to levy is the ending. Now, I really like where the characters are by the end of the season, with them deciding that Muse is something that goes beyond just saving the school, and is something they want to continue work on, like it's some kind of school idol project. However, the end itself feels a little too abrupt. There's a concert, Honoka manages to get past airport security because 9/11 didn't happen in this universe, and then it just kind of ends. I think it's a little weird to just end in the middle of something without properly concluding. Superstar Season 2 came out literally the second after Nijigasaki Season 2 stopped airing. The first and only time 2 seasons of the Love Live anime have come out in the same year. Commercially, 2022 was a big year, as it gave us a sequel to the sub-series that marks a return to tradition for the franchise. The new characters that are introduced are done justice, with them being given some really interesting dynamics with both the new characters and the old. However, to achieve this, the sequel didn't do as much with its returning cast, who are still fun to watch, just without as much of a character arc to go through. This is to be expected, as there are more subplots compared to the first one. However, that also means that the plot points from the beginning of the story have to suddenly get reintroduced in the third act in a way that makes it feel at odds with the stronger middle portion of the narrative. Speaking of that latter portion, a recognisable antagonist popping up out of the blue at the end of the story felt like a cheap attempt at securing a sequel. But that's enough about Modern Warfare 2022.
That'll do!
Let's talk about Love Live Superstar Season 2. Liella's second outing pulled what experts like to call a reverse Dolly Parton, since the member count went from 5 to 9. I was a little worried when I saw this, given the more concise number of idols is something that was pretty important to the success of Superstar. And by returning to a more traditional number of idols, there was a casualty in terms of characterization. Canon. Some say that Canon got flanderized because she went from a nervous ball of energy in the first season into a one-sided motivator for the other characters. I would agree in saying that I much prefer Season 1 Canon, but the way she's done in this season isn't as unreasonable as it's made out to be. Part of Canon's arc in the last season was learning to believe in herself, so to suddenly have her go back to how she was at the beginning of the first season would defeat the purpose of it. On top of this, the focus of the season is the idea of a new generation of Liella, so Canon needs to be more confident in order to act as a guide to the first years, especially Kinako. Kinako is the embodiment of Liella's evolution, as she is not dissimilar to how Canon was in Season 1, which is why the scenes between them early on showcased Canon getting somewhat of a perverse thrill from being treated as a senpai. I kind of wish they did more with this gag, but Alas. Besides Kenako, we also have Shiki and Mei, whose personalities are one has red hair and the other has blue hair. But the highlight is clearly Natsumi. When I saw that Natsumi was an influencer, I was waiting for her to become some sort of hey, how do you do fellow kids type character. But she's much more than that, and would not quite fit the description of vlogger. She would prefer a much more eloquent title, like Shitlord. She's brimming with personality and comes equipped with 3 unforgettable catchphrases. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Wait, I'm sorry, what? Really miss. Insert Natsumi catchphrase number 3 here. The interplay between the first years and second years is unique for this series, as you can see how the second years see a bit of themselves in their kohai, and how some are proud of this, like Ren and Shiki, and some are kind of ticked off by it, like Sumire and Natsumi. This means that the latter half has some really interesting moments between them, as well as some extra depth being given to Sumire, Kuku, and Ren. The performances got a massive facelift in Season 2, with the camera having to encompass more people on stage, but still feeling incredibly dynamic, largely thanks to the insane amount of effort that went into the CG. Chance Day, Chance Way is the biggest flex of the series, with every character continuously moving forward while dancing and the camera making it all come together. It also helps that I'm a sucker for the song itself. While Veen doesn't work too well as an antagonist within the story, when it comes to music, you can absolutely see how she puts the Ella on the back foot. The addition of orchestral elements into her music really helps give her musical numbers of presence, even if her actual character didn't have much of one. And where music is used to characterize Veen, every other new character is given so much with which to carve out an image for themselves, and largely through visuals, which is always a plus. Superstar Season 2 has to be the awkward middle child of the series, burdened with the obligation to void the consequences of Canon's last decision in the season in order to set up a sequel, but it's one that laid the groundwork for a lot of what that later season would do amazingly, even if some of what made the first season great is missing. Speaking of things that are missing, I've delayed talking about it for long enough. There was a lot riding on Sunshine. It was the first series that had to show what Love Live would look like with a whole new cast, a whole new set of songs, and a whole new Mazu. Unlike Muse, who were active 3 years before the start of their anime, Aquos had only formed the previous year. So this anime was going to form an even more instrumental part of the group's identity than their predecessors. Thankfully, it proved that lightning could strike twice, and potentially even harder. This is thanks to a step up in the animation, as while it wasn't at its smoothest, it was definitely coming leaps and bounds. Directorially too, there was also a new virility in the editing, the faster pace of it allowing for the visuals to carry the gags. The visuals carry a lot of things for that matter, including the storytelling and the setting. The setting of Numazu is as essential to Love Live Superstar's success as Love Live Superstar is to the success of the real-life Numazu, as the small town presents storytelling opportunities that just aren't possible with the Tokyo-based series. Not only do you get bombarded with the fact that the Izu Peninsula is fucking beautiful, but the smaller town means that every member of Aquos at least partially knew each other before becoming idols. Unlike the other series, it isn't a matter of someone showing up out of the blue and the entire group then dropping everything to get them to join, but instead people being pulled in by someone they are already close with. It helps that the characters are also entertaining on a conceptual basis, since many of them are almost subversions of the archetype they fall into. The Chunibyo is self-aware to the point of embarrassment. The student council president wants to shut down the idol club, not because they'll let down the school, but because she's a massive idol otaku who doesn't want to see them let down idols. At the heart of them is Chika, a determined girl willing to pick herself up and nose around her after every setback. But don't think this is a retread of Honoka. Where Honoka was stubborn enough to become a leader, Chika feels like someone who would keep doing what she's doing even if she had to do it alone and even if she knows it's impossible. This really comes through effectively in her dialogue, which much like the rest of the dialogue in this show is incredibly entertaining. But note my emphasis on dialogue. Also my emphasis on Daya, because she's one of the best characters. Each member of Aquos has been written with their relationships to the other characters in mind. Whenever they talk, that history plays an important role in deciding what they're going to say and how. So it's a crying shame that there's so many monologues. It doesn't feel like the characters talking with each other as much as it feels like one talking at another character. This becomes less of a problem later in the season though, and it's not as bad as the 2 other big problems with Love Live Sunshine Season 1. As much a great introduction this was for the new faces in Numazu, these problems are enough to firmly lock it at 6th place. The first of them is the constant referencing of School Idol Project. This is the first new group after Muse, so it makes sense to address the elephant in the room of how this new group will carve out an identity in a post-Muse world. But when they point out every last detail that overlaps, it just gets infuriating. No shit, the anime about girls becoming idols to save their school that's called Love Live is kind of similar to the anime about girls becoming idols in order to save their school that's called Love Live. Sunshine has plenty that sets it apart from school idol projects, so constantly chaining itself to it via comparisons always feels like they're putting themselves down while rubbing member berries in my face. However, you might be able to justify this because a key theme of this season is inspiration. Another big theme of Sunshine is persistence. For the most part, this theme is done quite nicely, with the visual motif of turning 1 into 0. However, there are some points where they really hammer it in. This includes the final performance, where before they sing, Aquaz tells the audience about how they got here, including them reenacting bits from earlier in the show. It was after the first minute of this roughly 3-minute sequence that I realised something. Hang on, they just made verbatim theatre. It is for this reason that I am unable to put Love Live Sunshine Season 1 any higher. You might say to me, surely you can't be so petty that you'd be willing to let your own personal aversion to verbatim theatre cloud your final judgment. So to those people I have to say, you bet I'm that petty. And don't call me Shirley. Now in the dead centre of this video, we have the most recent season, Love Live Superstar Season 3. Picking up after the cliffhanger at the end of Season 2, where Canon's new school life in Vienna gets cancelled due to Margarete's arrival, we see her having to learn a universal truth. That there's a lot you can do after getting rejected from Austrian art school. I'll discuss this more later, but the philosophy behind Liela at its best is quality over quantity, and this season takes it to heart with only 2 new additions to the group. Margarete and Wakana. These two are perfectly introduced in this season, since not only are they some of the most interesting characters in the whole franchise, but also ones who are directly designed to counter each other, as well as counter Canon. That's right, Canon's sudden 180 into the idol equivalent of the sham WoW guy is now given proper context. Instead of being someone passionate about school idols surrounded by like-minded individuals, she's forced to form a group with someone who doesn't give one about school idols, and someone who treats school idols as if they were gods. And she was Kratos. Margarete starts off coping and seething over her previous loss, and only becomes a school idol in order to get revenge, bringing down Liela using what Shiki describes as Western European sorcery, which is weird because the only people who think Austria is a part of Western Europe are Slovenians. If Shiki is Slovenian, then I'm not going to tell you who wears the trousers in the relationship between her and May, but I can certainly tell you who wears the thigh highs. But through more and more practice and personal growth, as well as the occasional confrontation from Wakana, Margarete learns that she not only likes school idols, but she has somewhere to belong with school idols. It's really nice to see, and it might be a good example of that enemies to lovers thing the kids are always talking about. However, Margarete's standoffishness brings her into conflict with Liela, who in turn have to up their game, which is also brilliant to watch. The second years all feel like they undergo satisfying evolutions, with ample time given to express unexpected new sides of their personalities. The emotional range of each character is nicely translated into the choreography, something that you'd expect to go to shit now that the camera has to keep track of 11 characters. However, the choreography is mapped out vividly, with a nicer selection of stages than Sonic X Shadow Generations. Seriously, who the fuck wanted Sunset Heights in there? Despite the macro being so ambitious, the micro still has glorious attention to detail, with each individual member emoting and reacting to what's happening during a performance, making them feel much more like the diegetic performances they are instead of music videos crowbarred into the middle of things. Add great editing and direction into the equation, and the choreography can go to places that no other season has gone to, with it coming to a head in Dazzling Game, where the two groups have a massive dance-off, ending in them reuniting, then revealing it was all happening in the middle of the school gymnasium in a performance where the camera is getting all of the best angles for it, which is not something I could say for this audience. Seriously, they've got their backs to you for most of the time. I'd feel ripped off, honestly. For the entry I've stuck at the exact midpoint, it sure isn't mid, but it does lose points because of how it handles the third years. Kanon and Chisato having to serve as mentors is a nice direction for them, but the other three are given basically nothing to do. You might say that Cuckoo had that arc in the middle where they all went to Shanghai, but that's just a retread of what happened in Season 2 with a slightly more interesting setting and slightly worse execution. It's their last year, but you wouldn't know it, because they graduate pretty nonchalantly, all things considered. I'd be willing to deduct more points for this, but I feel that I can forgive it. There are 2 other seasons of Love Live where graduation happens, and both of them were franchise highlights, so I can understand Superstar not throwing its hat into that respective ring out of fear there's not much new it could do. 2. Though, speaking of those 2 seasons that end in graduations, I've got to come clean with you. In the first draft of this script, and for that matter the second and third draft of this script, this season was in first place, and the season I've put in first place was in fourth. As a result, I feel I should announce this fact in order to show that I don't want to disrespect this season, or the sub-series as a whole, especially as I am being honest when I said that it was my previous favourite right up until the last minute. Believe me, it pains me to do Muse dirty like this. Many consider School Idol Project to be the zenith of Love Live, and I was amongst the ranks of these people until only a few months ago. The first season of School Idol Project was Love Live testing the waters of anime, and School Idol Project Season 2 was it ready to do a triple somersault from the 10-meter board and land with a splash. Or no splash, whichever gets you more points in diving. Season 2's presentation is energetic right off the bat, with a recap of Season 1 done in a very Hanukkah-ish fashion with some light fourth wall breaking in there, and a start so well executed that it allows me to forget that the first episode has them agreed to do the thing they had already agreed to do at the end of the last season. From there, we get more of the first season, but better. There's still plenty of slice of life antics to go about, but now all of the characters have been established, there's more room to experiment with them. Each episode feels much more consequential as a result, propping up not only Muse as a collective, but also the individuals within it. The separation between Muse as a group and Muse as individual members is put up to the forefront in this season. They realise Muse has become something greater than themselves, and now they only have a limited time left to enjoy it. There's a bittersweet aspect to everything, as it no longer becomes a question of whether they're going to win the Love Live, as it's become pretty obvious they will, but what they'll do with themselves afterwards. The uncertainty is an elephant in the room that they're all afraid to mention, which is why you'll see them confide in the members that are closest to them before they all decide to announce it to the rest of Muse in that wonderful scene on the beach. You really get a good psychological picture of what's happening for all 9 of them, and you still feel for them, even though the main looming threat of the school shutting down has gone away. It's ironic that a season all about legacy has such a prolific one, as this is the season in which Love Live proved why it was a cut above the rest in terms of animation. An easy testament to the new heights School Idol Project ascended to in this season is its most iconic moment, the performance of Snow Halation. Now, we've all heard the song, and yeah, we making it out the School Idol Project with this one. But the admiration people have for Snow Halation is because many people's first exposure to Muse was the original animated music video for it. That was 4 years prior to School Idol Project Season 2. Less than half a decade, but if you watch them both back to back, you can see how far the animation, the whole Love Live vision had come since that first version. Each member had gone from just vague hints at a personality to a fully realised character, thanks to largely this anime and this anime alone. It feels like an early victory lap, both for Muse in the context of the anime, as well as for the legacy of the show. As for the actual victory lap they do, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get goosebumps when I realised this was what the first opening was referencing. However, the ironic thing is that none of these concerts spoke as loudly as just 9 girls singing in a school gymnasium to the sound of only a piano. This scene got me, and don't lie, it got you as well. The perfect ending to the story of Muse. Before the second half of that last episode then changes tone to set up the movie. Endings are important and all, but you've got to get asses in seats somehow. School Idol Project's second season is what secured its legendary status, and it's safe to say that I doubt such effort would have been put into the future seasons were it not for School Idol Project Season 2 setting the bar so high. It's a beautifully presented testament to the power of an idol group coming together to create something collaboratively. So what could possibly be above it? Something that serves as the complete antithesis of that. Given that School Idol Project was going to be at number 1 in previous drafts of this script, why am I suddenly so content with putting it underneath something that's structurally unrecognisable compared to the other series of Love Live? Well, Nijigasaki Season 1 was always going to score high with me because it understands the fundamentals of Love Live possibly better than any other series. You see, there's a lot of anime out there about forming a group and achieving your dreams. For example, K-On!, A Place Further in the Universe. To a slightly different extent, Berserk. So if there's so much else like it out there, why do we keep coming back to Love Live specifically? It's for the individual characters and for the music. Also the Yuribei. Nijigasaki embraces this wholesale, giving each character at least a full episode in the spotlight, and showing off a new song for each of them with some of the best animation in the series. Also, there's a lot of Yuri bait. It was the first Love Live series of the 2020s, coming out after a 3-year drought, and it came in with just one intention, showing that Love Live had undergone a figurative engine upgrade. Nijigasaki Season 1 took Love Live beyond the stratosphere in terms of animation. But this animation wasn't in service of the same old story, and instead this show decided to experiment. This experimental feel is something that trickles down to every aspect of the show, from the episodic format, to the music, to even the setting. Odaiba was the perfect visual representation of what Nijigasaki stands for, since it's built on old foundations and loosely connected to the others, but still feels incredibly different from them. The reason this feels so separate from the rest of Love Live is largely down to there not being an actual Love Live that takes place in this Love Live, and there is no big threat that causes the students to become idols. Instead, most of the episodes pick one character, let you know what they're about, and what being or becoming an idol means to them. Now, some episodes do this better than others, but even the lesser episodes still offer an interesting portrait of the character it focuses on. Meanwhile, the best episodes of the series manage to tell a full story in their own right, with a beginning, middle, and end. It's pretty common consensus that Rina's episode is the crowd favourite, where we learn how she got her bad case of resting 8-bit face. It's an episode where the lack of an overarching A-plot in this series allows her internal conflict to take centre stage, and for those watching to really empathise with Rina's struggle.
I have autism.
Did you catch the one moment everybody shut the fuck up?
I don't know.
This is like being for real.
This is just one example I chose for the sake of making a Russian Badger reference, and there's plenty of other episodes like this that are similarly brilliant. After everyone's been given a proper introduction, it then has a low-stakes arc where they hang out together for the first time. And it's from there you can see the beginnings of the interpersonal chemistry, which the second season will go on to do absolutely nothing with. Despite there being no big music competition that these characters are preparing for, music has more of a presence in this series than any other, since it serves as one of the main ways of characterizing the setting and cast. When people talk about Love Live soundtracks, they mainly go on about the musical numbers, which makes sense because it's a musical. But Nijigasaki's regular background music feels like it's got more going on, as the orchestral sound of Sunshine and School Idol Project is now playing second fiddle to the electronic instruments, which really ties into the feeling that Nijigasaki is the future of Love Live. But the actual songs still take precedent, and these are easily the best ones in Love Live. Once again, down to the spirit of experimentation, since there are many individual songs here allowed to go in very different directions to your average larger group arrangement. One of my favourites has to be Eyes Psycho Hard, even though whenever I hear it, for some reason my car's brakes stop working. Your Honour. Nijigasaki was a bold step in a new direction for the Love Live franchise that I personally loved when it came out in 2020. So imagine how disappointed I was when the next Love Live adaptation went back to the basic formula. And imagine how pleasantly surprised I was when it kicked ass. After the engine upgrade of Nijigasaki, it was time to see how this new era would do justice to a more traditional Love Live story. In fact, you can take the words Love Live out of that equation, because Love Live Superstar Season 1 is the only season that stands as its own self-contained story with all the features of the classic hero's journey. I'm not just talking standard beginning, middle and end stuff, I'm including things like second act raising of the stakes and the initial refusal of the call to action. Who is this hero? Shibuya Kanon, a character whose given name refers to the sound of songs, and whose family name is literally just the place she lives, so we can't rule out nominative determinism for the desire to become a school idol. I kid, as she doesn't initially want the spotlight, owing to her crippling fear of it. It's due to a chance encounter with Cuckoo that she's forced to give it a go and overcome her self-doubt. And in a nutshell, that's why she's my favourite Love Live protagonist. At least the iteration of her in this season is. She has not only an external goal of setting up the school idol club, but a strong internal one, which she is always working towards throughout the series. You see her actively go from an awkward goofball to someone who's able to say her piece, stand her ground, and express herself. It also doesn't hurt that the comedy is nicely sprinkled in this season, with Kanon showing off more faces than a polyhedron. What I said about Kanon can be extended to every other character as well, with the added bonus that their character arcs don't just come to a sudden stop when they get added to Liela, because their goals are too well defined to suddenly cast aside their motivations the moment they join. To most characters, Liela is just the first step towards achieving their objectives, and these different objectives sometimes result in characters clashing. Kanon's determination clashes with Chisato's apprehensiveness. Cuckoo's chaotic nature clashes with Sumire's desire for perfection. Ren's strictness as school council president clashes with everyone because she's a school council president of the Love Live series. Due to the fact there's less characters the show needs to split its time between, they're all explored in much more detail, allowing for more in terms of backstory and ample time to establish the obstacles in their way. The show gets a lot of success out of this, with Ren being one of the rare cases where a school council president's ban on school idols makes sense, Sumire having to earn her place in Liela after she realizes it isn't the easy route to fame she thought it would be, and Canon having to juggle all of this while also making discoveries about herself. This isn't a group that's automatically going to get along once they're all singing together. They have to push and pull against each other before coming around to realizing what they can achieve through full cooperation, making the moment they finally unite feel hard-earned. With the smallest member count of the series, Liela's rise is one that's punctuated with the number of characters on stage increasing bit by bit. As a result, if the animation was lacking on just one of the characters during these musical scenes, you'd notice. Thankfully, Superstar shines with all the glow-ups of a 2020s Love Live series, be it just one on stage or the full 5. Every lost moment is accounted for with full expression to boot. However, while better technology plays a role in making things generally look nicer, it's ultimately negligible when you consider the role that directorial finesse plays. The big things like choreography are easy to notice, but the small details go underappreciated, so I'm giving those little details the mention they deserve. Things like how each episode title is a diegetic part of the world, and the fact that Yui Gaoka's layout has a building is rather unique, or the fact this season possesses my favourite ED of the franchise. I don't care if literally no one is asking. For all the bells and whistles added to it, Superstar Season 1 still has unmistakable DNA left over from School Idol projects. This is noticeable on a surface level, as Starlight Prelude is clearly trying to take a leaf out of Snow Halation's book. I mean, it looks nice, but remember, you aren't him. Where the School Idol project legacy is most pronounced is in how Liela also loses the Love Live on their first attempt. But like School Idol projects, this ending proves that a triumphant loss is miles better than a hollow victory, because the characters didn't need to hoist that trophy for them to find what they needed. They now have recognition of how far they'd come, and how much they wanted to continue down the path they'd set themselves on. That's a lovely message. Plus, there's nothing wrong with being second place, especially if this is what you're up against. Of course it was going to get the highest ranking. It's got S in the abbreviation. The school still needed sign-ups, the Love Live winners still needed to be crowned, and Aquas needed just 12 more episodes to show why they're still the fan favourites all these years later. As the last Love Live of the 2010s, Sunrise pulled out all of the stops to make Season 2 of Sunshine look as great as possible, showing off even more of Numazu's beauty spots. While it would be a few years before the CG was fully perfected, there's nothing that pulls you out of the sensational musical scenes, of which there are many. There's a lot going on visually in this series, yet it never feels cluttered. It's like a meal that leaves you satisfied, but doesn't leave you in a food coma. And that's not the only thing in this season that's succulent. One of the achievements of Sunshine Season 2 is that even with the two major plot points, the school's closure and the Love Live finals, it's never prevented from spending time exploring its characters. Since we didn't see as much of the characters in the first season, reasonable time is allocated to showing more sides to them. The Hakodate arc gives Daya more depth, and in turn gives Ruby more to do, and shows that the older and younger sister dynamic isn't as straightforward as it seems. The third years in general are given more facets to their personalities, and now they can spend more time joking around instead of just speaking dourly to each other. The season also tries adding more unexpected dynamics, such as the episode where Yoshiko and Riko bond over their shared love of a random dog they just met. This episode might not sound like much, but it's so good that they made the dog one of the central characters in Yohane in the Pirellian, an anime that proves Mari is only the second most white woman-coded girl in Aquas. This season also solves the first season's problem with monologues, as now more is expressed not through words, but through much more visual tells, like proxemics. It's only really Chika who's stuck monologue-y in this season, and while she is much less entertaining compared to Season 1, every other character is at their best, so I'm willing to accept the trade-off. However, as a wise man once said, it can't all be Love Live Sunshine and Rainbows, and Aquas are slapped with a heavy setback halfway through. The school they work so hard to save goes under, which is a massive blow to everyone. The scene in which it happens is easily the lowest you see any group sink in any series of Love Live so far, so to see them turning that into yet more determination is something that will forever be seen as the defining moment of unity for Aquas. That's all great, story's lovely, la-di-da, but why did I put this at number 1 instead of School Idol Project Season 2? Well, I've got two reasons. Firstly, if I put School Idol Project Season 2 here, then that would be the third time in a row I've let the chronologically second installment get the top spot in one of these ranking videos, and I don't want to get predictable. But the more important reason is down to that one Love Live fundamental. music. The high point of Muse came with that last performance of Aishiteru Banzai, and it was beautiful. I could imagine that Aquos could do Aishiteru Banzai. But I couldn't imagine Muse doing My Mai Tonight. This song is so fucking good. The story of Urano Hoshi School might have ended in its disbandment, but that's not the memory it leaves us with. It leaves us with memories like this. Peak performances and all of the little moments between them. This is something that we as an audience can now sympathise with, since we live in a world that's gone beyond Aquos, with them having graduated earlier this year, leaving a sizable hole that no amount of ice cream covers can quite fill. Aquos were singers, actresses and dancers who pushed themselves to their limits and never gave up. So to think they spent 10 years doing this is mind-blowing. After all, I've been speaking for just under 40 minutes and I need to lie down. Bye.